aka Mr. Holla at Your Motherfucking Boy. So now that Terence Crawford versus Julius Indongo was in the books, we can kind of talk about what happens next. You know what I mean? The post-fight aftermath and everything that comes after the fight, because, you know what I mean, this one's in the books, like I said. You know what I mean? Terence Crawford, whether you like it or not, is the undisputed champion at 140 pounds. But I think the biggest question is, what does he do next? You know what I mean? Now that you've won all belts, what do you do next? And the thing about this is, it's not like Terence Crawford just kind of went after all. He came into the division and then just went after all the champions and then just became, you know what I mean, undisputed like that. It wasn't like he just kind of just, he did that. Like, he took the short route to becoming undisputed. He actually took the long route to being undisputed. Terence Crawford beat everyone worth mentioning at 140 pounds. I mean, anyone who you can think of. If he didn't beat him, he beat the person that beat them. You know what I mean? Like on some Floyd Mayweather kind of shit. You know what I mean? Like, you know, he didn't beat Lucas Matisse, but he beat Victor Postol, who beat Lucas Matisse. So it's like, the man really cleaned out 140 pounds. What does he do next? You know? I think there's a few fights for him down there. I mean, should he want them? I mean, he's certainly not obligated to take them, but there's a few fights out there for him. Emir Imam, that's one that I would like. Even though Imam lost that fight to, I forgot the guy who fought Broner, who lost a split decision to Broner or something like that. I forgot his name. But Emir Imam is out there. I think he's like number 1 or number 2 for the WBC. I'm not sure which sanctioning body is. But Emir Imam's out there. Lucas Matisse, I believe, is still out there. Granted, these guys just lost, but, you know, he's still out there. You know, those would make for relatively entertaining fights, you know what I mean, for the most part. I mean, I think Crawford wins both of those fights, but there's certainly fights that he could take should he choose to. Who else is out there? Who else is out there at 140? Mikey Garcia is kind of hanging around the division a little bit. Now that right there is interesting, because Mikey Garcia hasn't really introduced himself officially to the 140 pound division. You know what I mean? He did just fight Adrian Broner at 140. So that technically means he's in the division, but technically he's not. He's really a champion at 135. He just kind of went up for that one fight. But the question remains, what does he want to do? You know what I mean? Because I think a Crawford Garcia fight would be big. That would be a really, really big fight at 140. It'd be a really career-defining fight for both of them. I think Mikey Garcia at this point hasn't established himself as a pound-for-pound fighter, but he's certainly close. He's certainly close to being a pound-for-pound fighter. And by him getting in the ring with Crawford, I think that's kind of a legacy fight. I think win, lose, or draw, both of them will go on to have terrific careers after that fight is all said and done. So that would be a very interesting fight at 140. What else is out there at 140? What else is out there at 140? Shit. I think that's pretty much it, though. I mean, if he's not fighting Mikey Garcia, Imam, you know what I mean, maybe Matisse, I don't know that there's anything he can really do there. I mean, he even beat the guys that relatively have a name. He beat, what's the guy's name? Man, I can't even think of anybody's name right now. Hammer and Hank. There we go. He beat Hammer and Hank. He beat all those guys, man. You know what I mean? All those guys. So, you know, I think if he's not fighting any of those guys, then he should probably move up, unless he's going to just fight a few people just to kind of get a few defenses with that undisputed, with those belts, and then just move up. But of course, that's the next thing we got to talk about, him moving up. He could, of course, move up to 147. I think a lot of people expect him to do that. 147 stacked weight division. In the last video that I did, I mentioned that I thought that Crawford could clean up 147. I still believe that, of course. I mean, it's only been like one video, but I believe that. I think Crawford moves up and he cleans out 147 as well. I think he's too versatile. I think he has too many tools. You know what I mean? I think he can just do too much, man. I don't see any of those fighters being able to keep up. You know what I mean? Earl Spence, to me, probably has the best chance of beating him. Even though I think Thurman beats Spence, I think Crawford beats both of them. I think Crawford can beat Spence. Hold on, damn it, I'm fucking shit up. I think that Thurman beats Spence, but I think Spence has a better chance of beating Crawford than Thurman does. I think Thurman. I think Thurman is gonna try to box with Crawford, and I don't think that's gonna work. I think Crawford's gonna outbox him if that fight happens. As opposed to Earl Spence, I think Earl Spence is gonna try to fight Crawford, and he's gonna have a much better chance of beating beating Crawford by just trying to fight him and outstrength him and outmuscle him, being the bigger, stronger guy, and that's going to work to his advantage better than, say, Thurman. Now, mind you, Thurman is an intelligent boxer as well. I think Thurman, given the opportunity, he can certainly switch it up and decide to fight more aggressively and kind of bring the fight to Crawford. But I just don't know that he's big enough and strong enough to kind of make that kind of impression early on like that. You know what I mean? Like I don't know that will necessarily work. I think that him and Crawford are kind of more or less around the same size rather than Earl Spence. I think Earl Spence is just humongous. You know what I mean? Earl Spence is just a humongous dude. I see if Terence Crawford goes toe to toe with Earl Spence, I can see Earl Spence just kind of dogging him, man. You know what I mean? Like that. But I still think that Crawford would win. You know what I mean? Because he would find a way to kind of outmaneuver Earl. But I can see Earl having a better shot than Thurman in a fight versus Crawford. But at the end of the day, I think Crawford beats everybody at 147 pounds. Sean Porter, Danny Garcia included as well, of course. You know what I mean? I think that Crawford just makes waves now at this point. Now he's going up to 147. Those guys need to be worried. Everybody who got a belt up there need to be worried. They need to be worried. Jeff Horn, I guess, is in the mix too. You know what I mean? And I think that's probably the most, probably the easiest fight to make. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's the closest to the, you know what I mean, closest to where we're at right now, a Terence Crawford versus Jeff Horn fight. And I think that Terence Crawford gets past Jeff Horn. I'm not going to say that that's going to be an easy fight because, you know, Jeff Horn, I could see him being a little pesky in there, and he's going to be naturally bigger than Crawford, at least originally. At least if that's the next fight, he's going to be naturally bigger, naturally maybe a little stronger. But I think Crawford ultimately is going to end up outmaneuvering him and even stopping Jeff Horn. At the end of the day, if that fight's made, you know what I mean? But I see that possibly being the next fight at 147 pounds. I think a lot of people suspect that, though. Because the thing about it is, if Terence Crawford gets that WBO belt at 147, now you have the three belt holders, Terence Crawford, Earl Spence, and Keith Thurman. All right, they got to fight. You know what I'm saying? Like, somebody got to fight. You know what I mean? Like, there's just no way, you know what I mean? And these guys are all game. These guys are all, for the most part, willing to fight everybody. Keith Thurman has gone on record saying that he's willing to fight any and everybody. Earl Spence, we know for the most part, he's willing to fight anybody. And Terence Crawford, we know for the fact he's willing to fight anybody. So if that comes to fruition, god damn, this might be a Leonard Hearns Hagler kind of thing, man. It might be that kind of situation. I could see these guys fighting and then fighting again and then fighting again. Like, I could see the fights all being that competitive, you know what I mean, to where we could see trilogies of these fights, you know what I mean, epic legendary fights. I could see that at 147. I could see it really going down, you know what I mean. I could really see that, and I could see these guys all going up to 154, doing pretty well up there, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? But the real action is going to happen at 147, man. The real action is going to go down at 147. I think we're going to be in for it, man. Because Crawford's going to go up to 147, man. I think his next fight will probably be like it depends on what's going on with Pacquiao. You know what I mean? God damn, Pacquiao again. It depends on what happens with him. If Pacquiao fights Horn again, hopefully Horn wins. I'm just going to hope that he wins, you know what I mean, and beats Pacquiao again, and, or Pacquiao retire. I don't know. But if that happens, then Crawford might take maybe like a tune-up to kind of get acclimated to the division. And then his next fight might be against Jeff Horn at that division. And then we get to see some real shit, after that. After he gets through Jeff Horn, or we'll get to see some real shit. You know what I mean? But ultimately, man, I mean, big things popping right now in the sport of boxing, man. Big things are popping. You know what I mean? Now the downside to this is Julius Indongo. You know what I mean? Because we talked about Terence Crawford. We talked about the possibilities of, what he has to look forward to in the future. But Julius Indongo, man, let's talk about him for a second, because Indongo, he was really kind of nameless after this Crawford fight, man. And it's kind of, see, if you're a promoter, this is why you kind of try to avoid situations like this. Like when your fighter is not built up to the point where he can sustain a loss, it's really kind of crippling for him, his boxing career. Because you guys got to remember, boxers, they have to, they don't have a scheduled amount of fights. They have to legitimately create these fights out of nothing, meaning somebody has to have the incentive to want to fight you. If they don't have an incentive to fight you, they're just not going to fight you, because they have several other options. You know what I mean? So if you don't bring anything to the table and you're a good fighter, then it's going to be hard for you to make fights. And we've seen this over and over again. I mean, look at Rigondeaux. Motherfucker Rigondeaux is probably the best fighter on earth. He's undefeated and he has belts, and people still don't want to fight him. So could you imagine somebody like an Indongo, somebody who's now beltless, you know what I mean, has probably zero fan base in Namibia, you know what I mean? So we can't count on him to sell any tickets anywhere. We don't know what's going on. I mean, maybe he does have a fan base over there, you know what I mean? But it's not a notable fan base, at least as far as what we understand over here in the States. I know we ignorant as shit over here, but but as far as for what we understand, there's no viable fan base. There's no belts on the line. The guy's a legitimate, dangerous opponent for anybody. You know what I mean? What's going to happen with him? Does he restart? Does he rebuild? I mean, honestly, if Crawford's going to be leaving the division, he could reclaim, those belts. He could turn around and become undisputed. He's maybe 1 or 2 fights away from getting his belts back. Maybe he takes, granted, he has like a number 2 ranking position or whatever. Hopefully they don't drop him too far down in the rankings, but granted, maybe he can get a fight against maybe a number 3 or number 4 ranked person in one of the sanctioning bodies, you know what I mean? And then get right back in position for another title shot. Because Crawford, like I mentioned earlier, I don't think he's going to be there too much longer. So you're right back in line for one of those belts. And losing to Terence Crawford, man, it really doesn't say a whole lot. I mean, it doesn't. You're not trash because you lost to Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford is just that good of a fighter. So, I mean, against anyone else, I think Indongo does pretty well. You know what I mean? If you put him in there with maybe an Amir Imam or maybe a Lucas Matisse or maybe some of those other top guys at 140, I'd like to see how he does. You know what I mean? I'd like to see how he can work with those guys. You know what I mean? I mean, it's, I guess, he just kind of has to start from ground zero, man, and kind of work his way up. Not really ground zero, but he just kind of have to, kind of go to the drawing board and shit, work from there. I don't think that it's over for Indongo. I think that maybe, he's gonna have some rebuilding to do and just kind of have to re-strategize and that sort of thing. You know what I mean? But it's kind of interesting to speculate. You know what I mean? It's interesting to speculate. I'm interested to see what happens going forward, I really want to see what kind of fighter this is. I don't think that this fight told the story of how good Indongo actually is. And I want to see if he's actually going to get better or worse or whatever. But, I'm interested to see what happens. I like that. I like Cinderella stories, man. I like Cinderella stories. Let's see what happens with Indongo going forward. Let's see what happens with Crawford going forward. I can't wait to see what happens with Crawford going forward. You know what I mean? Can't wait for that. You know what I mean? But we'll get that soon enough. Soon enough. Anyway, let me know what you guys think about the post-fight aftermath. You know what I mean? Hit it up in the comment section below. You can also hit me up on Twitter, Box capital X or capital X Die. You can hit me up on Facebook, Box -sign or -sign Die. Like the video, subscribe, all that bullshit. But until next time, it's your buddy Dynamite signing out. Holla at your motherfucking boy.